It starts like any other emergency call until it doesn't. A black woman, her silver hair gleaming with wisdom earned from decades of saving lives, walks into a hospital. They think she's nobody, but she's the one person with the power to save them all. It was just after 7:30 a.m. when Dr. Amara Johnson stepped out of her car at Riverside Medical Center in Tampa. The morning sun caught the silver strands in her neatly styled hair as she adjusted her burgundy blazer. Well worn but perfectly pressed. At 62, her back slightly bent from decades of leaning over operating tables, she moved with deliberate purpose. Each step measured but confident. She carried her medical bag in hands marked by years of performing life-saving surgeries. Amara didn't announce herself when entering hospitals. After 30 years as a neurosurgeon, breaking barriers in one of medicine's most exclusive fields, she preferred to observe first. The habit had served her well in a profession where respect didn't come easily to women who looked like her. The call had come 2 hours earlier from Dr. Patricia Williams, Chief of Staff. A 12-year-old girl named Sarah Martinez was dying from a rare brain aneurysm rupture. The bleeding was in the most dangerous location possible. The kind of case that required Amara's specialized microsurgical technique. Only 6 surgeons in the country could perform this procedure successfully, and she was the closest. "Amara, you're her only chance," Dr. Williams had pleaded over the phone. "Our neurosurgeon tried to stabilize her, but the bleeding resumed. Without your technique, she won't make it past noon." Amara had driven straight from Jacksonville, her mind already visualizing the delicate operation ahead. The procedure required threading instruments through brain tissue so fragile that one tremor could cause permanent paralysis or death. She'd performed this surgery 9 times in her career and never lost a patient. The hospital lobby buzzed with controlled chaos. News crews had gathered outside after word spread about the highway accident that brought multiple victims in. Families paced anxiously, some still in church clothes, others in pajamas after rushing from home. Amara approached the elevator bank, but a large hand grabbed her shoulder from behind. "Ma'am, where exactly do you think you're going?" She turned to face Security Officer Dennis Crawford, an imposing man whose aggressive enforcement style had made him popular with hospital administration. He was known for maintaining order through intimidation, especially with people who didn't look like they belonged in this upscale private facility. "I'm Dr. Johnson. I was called for emergency surgery," she said calmly, reaching into her blazer to show her hospital credentials. Crawford barely glanced at the identification before dismissing it entirely. "This is a restricted area. Family members and visitors need to wait in designated areas downstairs. You can't just walk around claiming to be medical staff." Amara felt the familiar sting of assumptions she'd faced countless times. "Officer, I need to get to the surgical floor immediately. There's a patient who needs life-saving surgery." Crawford stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. "Lady, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know who belongs here and who doesn't. And you," he looked her up and down dismissively, "definitely don't belong in the surgical wing. Please call Dr. Williams on the 7th floor. She's the chief of staff and she's expecting me. After we complete our mandatory security screening," he replied firmly. "We've had increasing problems with people hiding contraband in their hair. Standard hospital procedure now requires inspection." 2 other security officers appeared, drawn by Crawford's authoritative presence. He motioned toward a small windowless office behind the reception desk. "Ma'am, we need to conduct a thorough inspection." "I do not consent to any search," Amara said firmly, but her mind was calculating precious time. Every minute delayed was another minute closer to losing Sarah. The girl's brain was swelling, and without immediate surgery, permanent damage was inevitable. "You consent by being on hospital property," Crawford said, gripping her arm and steering her toward the room. "Hospital policy clearly states all suspicious individuals are subject to screening." The security office was cramped with harsh fluorescent lighting. A single metal chair sat in the center, facing a table covered with various equipment. Amara's eyes immediately focused on electric clippers sitting prominently among the devices. "Sit down," Crawford ordered. Amara remained standing, her medical bag clutched tightly. "I'm a licensed neurosurgeon with full hospital privileges. There's a 12-year-old child upstairs who will die without immediate surgery. Please verify my identity with Dr. Williams." If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We are just a small channel trying to grow. And do not forget to comment where you're watching from. Thank you, and back to our video. "Hair inspection is mandatory for anyone acting suspiciously," Crawford said, grabbing the clippers and testing them with a loud mechanical buzz. "Could be hiding drugs, weapons, or stolen medications in there." The clippers roared to life. Amara realized with devastating clarity that fighting this violation would only delay her further. Every second she spent arguing was another second closer to losing her patient. "This is assault and a violation of my civil rights," she said quietly, but she sat down in the chair. "This is standard procedure," Crawford replied with obvious satisfaction. He began running the clippers through her carefully maintained silver hair. Decades of growth fell to the floor in uneven chunks. Hair that had taken years to grow, that she'd styled for medical conferences and award ceremonies, that represented her dignity and hard-won professional status. She sat in complete silence, thinking only of Sarah Martinez lying unconscious upstairs. The girl's parents were probably pacing in a waiting room, holding hands and praying, trusting that the specialist they'd been promised was coming to save their daughter. Crawford stepped back to admire his work, wiping loose strands from his uniform. "Much better. Now you look more appropriate for your actual station." Amara stood slowly, brushing remnants of hair from her blazer. "You have no idea what you've just done." "I know exactly what I did," Crawford replied with a cruel smile. "Taught someone about showing proper respect and knowing their place." She picked up her medical bag and walked toward the door. "I need to get to the operating room immediately." "7th floor, elevator bank C," Crawford called after her with satisfaction. "Try not to get lost along the way." Amara walked through the hospital lobby, acutely aware of every stare, every whispered comment from staff and visitors who had witnessed her humiliation. Her reflection in the elevator doors showed the damaged patches of missing hair, evidence of violation. But her mind was already shifting to the complex surgery that awaited her. The elevator doors opened on the 7th floor to reveal organized chaos that only existed in trauma centers during crisis. Medical staff in scrubs rushed between patient rooms, monitors beeped urgent warnings, and overhead pages called for specialists. Amara walked directly to the central nurses station where charge nurses coordinated life-saving care. "I'm Dr. Amara Johnson from Jacksonville, here for the Martinez emergency craniotomy," she announced to the head nurse. The charge nurse looked up from her computer screens, took in Amara's appearance, the roughly shaved head, the remnants of silver hair still clinging to her burgundy blazer, the obvious evidence of assault, and her face went completely white with shock. "Dr. Johnson? The neurosurgeon from University of Florida? Oh my God, what happened to you? Where is my patient?" Amara asked, refusing to be distracted by the violation she'd endured or the growing attention her appearance was attracting from medical staff. "Room 714. Dr. Williams has been desperately trying to reach you for the past hour. She's currently in surgery on another trauma victim from the accident, but she left specific instructions." The nurse trailed off, staring at the visible evidence of what had clearly been an attack. Amara walked purposefully toward room 714, where she could see through the glass walls a small figure surrounded by the machinery keeping her alive. Sarah Martinez looked impossibly young among the monitors and ventilators. Her parents sat in plastic chairs beside the bed, holding hands and whispering prayers, their Sunday church clothes wrinkled from hours of waiting. She approached the attending physician, Dr. Michael Torres, who was reviewing the latest brain scans with a resident. When he saw her, his face went completely white with recognition and horror. "Dr. Johnson? We've been desperately waiting for you. The patient's intracranial pressure has been climbing steadily." "But what? Who did this to you? How long since her last seizure episode?" Amara asked, immediately shifting into clinical mode, her eyes scanning the monitors and noting the dangerous readings that indicated Sarah's condition was deteriorating rapidly. 30 minutes ago. Her pressure readings are now critical. We've maxed out medical management. She needs surgical decompression immediately or we'll lose her. Amara nodded grimly and headed toward the scrub area. As she moved through the busy hallway, she passed Dennis Crawford, who had apparently followed her upstairs, probably expecting to escort her out of the hospital entirely. When their eyes met across the corridor, his confident expression began to crumble as he watched medical staff greeting her with obvious respect and growing outrage. Dr. Johnson. Dr. Williams appeared, having just finished emergency surgery on another accident victim. Her surgical scrubs were still damp with perspiration, exhaustion lining her face. Thank God you're finally here. Sarah's condition has been deteriorating rapidly. She stopped mid-sentence, staring at Amara's shaved head. What happened to your hair? We can discuss that after I save this child's life, Amara replied firmly. I need to scrub in immediately. Every minute we delay increases the risk of permanent neurological damage. Dr. Williams looked past her and saw Crawford standing frozen by the elevator, and understanding dawned on her face. The color drained as the implications became clear. Dennis did this to you? Dr. Williams, every minute we spend discussing this is another minute closer to losing this patient. Let's focus on saving Sarah's life first. Amara entered the surgical scrub room and began the meticulous 10-minute ritual she'd performed thousands of times. Through the observation window, she could see the operating room being prepared, instruments laid out according to her specifications, anesthesia equipment calibrated, surgical team assembling. When she entered or two, complete silence fell over the room. The anesthesiologist, surgical nurses, residents, and technicians all stared at her roughly shaved head, immediately understanding that something terrible had happened to the surgeon they'd been waiting for. Good morning, everyone, Amara said calmly, accepting her surgical gown and gloves with practiced efficiency. Let's save this little girl's life. For the next 4.5 hours, Amara performed microsurgery that fewer than 10 surgeons in the world could accomplish successfully. Using techniques she'd pioneered through years of research, she carefully navigated around critical brain structures, repaired the ruptured aneurysm with sutures finer than human hair, and meticulously stopped the bleeding that had threatened Sarah's life. Her hands moved with precision and confidence despite everything she'd endured. The operating room was silent except for monitor beeping and quiet instructions she gave her team as they worked together to perform what could only be described as medical magic. When she finally stepped out of the operating room at 1:15 p.m., still wearing blood-stained scrubs and showing exhaustion from hours of intense concentration, Sarah's parents were waiting in the hallway along with Dr. Williams and hospital administrators. How is she? Sarah's mother asked, tears streaming down her face. Sarah is going to make a complete recovery, Amara said simply, pulling off her surgical cap to reveal her damaged hair. No permanent brain damage. The aneurysm has been completely repaired. She should regain consciousness within the next few hours. Sarah's father, a middle school teacher named Roberto Martinez, stepped forward with tears in his eyes. Dr. Johnson, I don't know how we can ever thank you. Dr. Williams told us you were the only surgeon who could save her life. Amara looked past the grateful parents to where Dennis Crawford now stood against the wall, his face ashen with the full realization of what he had done. Hospital security officers flanked him, and his hands were cuffed behind his back. I came here to do my job, she said. That's what I did. I came here to do my job, Mr. Martinez, Amara said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. That's exactly what I did. Dr. Williams stepped forward, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and shame. Dr. Johnson, on behalf of this entire institution, I apologize for what happened to you. This is completely unacceptable and contradicts everything we stand for as healers. Hospital Administrator Dr. Elizabeth Harper approached, visibly shaken by both the liability and moral implications. Dr. Johnson, we are conducting a full investigation into this incident. Mr. Crawford has been terminated immediately and will face criminal charges for assault. We're also reviewing every complaint ever filed against him. Amara looked directly at Crawford, whose earlier arrogance had been completely replaced by the sick understanding of what he had done. Mr. Crawford, you nearly cost a child her life today. You attacked the very person this hospital called to save her. I hope you think about Sarah Martinez every day for the rest of your life." Crawford's voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't know. I had no idea." "That's exactly the problem," Amara replied firmly. "You saw an elderly black woman and immediately assumed I didn't belong. You never bothered to verify who I was because you'd already decided what I must be." She turned to address the growing crowd of medical staff, reporters who had somehow gotten upstairs, and administrators. "What happened to me today represents a systemic problem that extends far beyond one security officer. I want every employee of this hospital to remember this moment." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "Remember that respect and dignity aren't earned by appearance, age, or assumptions. They're owed to every human being who walks through these doors, especially those who dedicate their lives to healing others." A young resident in the crowd stepped forward. "Dr. Johnson, I witnessed what happened downstairs. I should have said something. I was scared to challenge security." Amara's expression softened slightly. "Thank you for speaking up now. That takes courage. But next time, remember that patient lives depend on all of us protecting each other." Dr. Harper cleared her throat. "Dr. Johnson, beyond our investigation and Mr. Crawford's termination, what would you recommend to prevent this from happening again?" "Comprehensive bias training for all staff," Amara replied without hesitation. "Not just diversity seminars, but real education about implicit bias and its consequences. Psychological evaluation for anyone in security positions. And a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior." She paused, looking around the room. "But most importantly, a culture change. When someone sees injustice happening, they need to feel empowered to speak up. Silence makes everyone complicit." Crawford was led away in handcuffs. The man who had felt so powerful 2 hours earlier now facing the consequences of nearly costing a child her life. His replacement would be someone who understood that hospital security meant protecting everyone, not targeting people based on appearance. Over the following weeks, the story spread beyond Tampa. Medical organizations across the country began implementing what became known as the Johnson Protocol, comprehensive measures to prevent discrimination in healthcare settings. 6 months later, Amara returned to Riverside Medical Center to check on Sarah Martinez, who had made a remarkable recovery, and to oversee the full implementation of the new training programs. Her own hair had grown back into a short, stylish cut that she'd decided she actually preferred. Sarah, now healthy and energetic, ran up to hug her surgeon when she saw her in the hospital lobby. "Dr. Johnson, you saved my life. Look, I can run and play soccer again." Amara smiled, touching her new haircut. "That's what doctors do, sweetheart. We help people heal, no matter what obstacles we face." A young medical student approached after Amara's presentation to the staff. "Dr. Johnson, what you did that day, staying focused on the patient despite everything that happened to you, that fundamentally changed how I think about being a doctor." "Medicine isn't about us," Amara replied thoughtfully. "It's about the people we serve. When we remember that, when we put their needs above our own pain and anger, we remember who we really are and why we chose this profession." The student nodded earnestly. "But how do you find the strength to keep going when people treat you that way?" "Because someone's child needed me," Amara said simply. "And that will always matter more than someone else's ignorance or hatred." As she walked through the hospital corridors that day, Amara noticed the changes. New diversity training certificates on walls, revised security protocols posted at every entrance, and most importantly, a different atmosphere among the staff. People made eye contact, greeted each other with respect, and seemed more aware of their interactions. The story of Dr. Amara Johnson reminds us that true strength isn't about fighting every battle or seeking revenge against those who wrong us. Sometimes the greatest victory is staying focused on what matters most, saving lives and healing others, even when the world tries to make us forget our worth and our purpose. Sometimes the most powerful response to hatred is simply doing your job with dignity and excellence. If you enjoyed our story, hit the subscribe button for more inspiring stories and don't forget to like and share.